The room fell silent when Jackie Chan began to cry. For the first time in decades, the man the world knew as unbreakable could no longer hold himself together. The silence did not arrive gently. It collapsed onto the room, heavy and absolute, as if the air itself had chosen to stop moving. Hundreds of people sat frozen beneath soft stage lights, watching a moment that none of them had prepared for. This was not a film scene. There were no rehearsals, no second takes. Only a man standing at a podium, his hands trembling, his voice breaking under a weight far greater than words. For decades, Jackie Chan had been known as a symbol of endurance, a man who absorbed pain for a living, a body that refused to surrender. He had fallen from buildings, shattered bones, and returned to the screen smiling. Audiences around the world learned to associate him with resilience, discipline, and laughter. But on that night, none of those familiar traits remained intact. His eyes were red, his breathing uneven, and when the tears finally escaped, no one in the room looked away. This was not grief performed for cameras. It was grief that had been waiting too long. The event was meant to honor the life of a young actor whose career had ended far too soon. Yu Menglong had been described as gentle, respectful, and relentlessly hard-working. To the public, he was a rising presence in romantic dramas. To those who knew him personally, he represented something rarer in an industry built on exhaustion. Hope. Jackie Chan did not begin by speaking of death. He spoke of character, of kindness, of a young man who carried himself with humility, even during sleepless nights and endless shoots. He described smiles that never faded, even when fatigue hollowed the body. As he spoke, the room listened not to a legend, but to a witness. When his voice began to tremble, it became clear that this was not a prepared statement. These were words pulled from somewhere deeper, somewhere raw. He admitted that he had spoken with Yu Menglong only days before the tragedy. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, just a conversation, the kind people replay in their minds when it is already too late. The young actor had sounded tired, Jackie recalled, but still hopeful, still planning, still moving forward. Then came the pause. Jackie Chan stopped speaking, his head lowered. The silence returned, thicker than before. It was the kind of silence that carries questions without asking them. In that pause, the audience sensed it. This story was unfinished, and perhaps deliberately so, because when Jackie finally looked up, he did not offer explanations. He did not give causes. He did not name anyone or anything responsible. Instead, he delivered a single thought that cut deeper than any accusation could. Some things, he said quietly, could not be spoken openly. And in that moment, as the cameras continued to roll and the world leaned closer to its screens, one question began to take shape, a question that would not leave the room with the audience, a question that would follow the story long after the lights dimmed. And as Jackie Chan struggled to speak through his tears, one question began to echo across the industry. What was it that he knew but could not say? Yu Menglong was never introduced to the public as a tragedy in waiting. He entered the industry quietly, without scandal or spectacle, carrying the kind of presence that casting directors often describe as effortless. His performances were soft-spoken, his expressions restrained. He did not dominate the frame. He inhabited it. In interviews, colleagues described him using the same words repeatedly. Polite, grateful, tireless. He arrived early. He left late. He thanked crew members by name. In an industry where ambition often hardens into entitlement, Yu Menglong remained conspicuously untouched by arrogance. What audiences saw was a young actor rising steadily through romantic dramas. What they did not see was how much silence that ascent required. According to those who worked beside him, Yu Menglong rarely complained. Even during overnight shoots that stretched into dawn, he maintained the same gentle composure. Fatigue appeared only briefly, usually masked by a practiced smile. When asked how he was doing, his answer was always the same. He was grateful. He was learning. He was living his dream. Jackie Chan remembered this clearly. When he spoke of Yu Menglong, he did not list achievements or awards. He spoke of work ethic, of humility, of a young man who treated each opportunity as something fragile, something that could disappear if mishandled. To Jackie, this was not just professionalism. It was a reflection of character. Their final conversation was unremarkable by any traditional measure. There was no argument, no confession, no sense of farewell. Yu Menglong mentioned exhaustion, as many young actors do. He mentioned upcoming work, new responsibilities, future plans. He smiled through the fatigue, Jackie recalled, the same way he always did. Yet something lingered. Jackie admitted that he noticed a subtle difference, nothing he could name precisely, nothing alarming enough to justify intervention, just a feeling that the young man was carrying more than he allowed himself to show, a weight hidden beneath courtesy. In hindsight, such moments become unbearable. Ordinary sentences are replayed with forensic intensity. Tone is dissected. Pauses are interrogated. But at the time, life moved forward. Schedules continued. Cameras rolled. No one stopped the machine. When news of Yu Menglong's death reached Jackie Chan, the impact was immediate and disorienting. He did not speak to anyone. He did not issue statements. He withdrew completely. For days, he avoided news headlines, refused social media, and isolated himself from the very industry he had spent a lifetime navigating. He later admitted that after he could not bear to see images of the young actor. Every photograph reopened the same question. What had been missed? Jackie Chan had witnessed death before. His career spanned decades. He had attended funerals. He had lost colleagues. But this loss, he said, felt different. It did not arrive as an inevitable passage of time. It arrived as an interruption, a rupture. It felt, he confessed, like losing family. That admission carried weight. In Asian entertainment culture, such language is rarely used lightly. To claim familial loss is to acknowledge a bond that extends beyond professional obligation. It implies responsibility, and perhaps regret. As the industry reacted, public narratives began to form quickly. Tributes flooded social media. Fans shared clips. Agencies released carefully worded condolences. Everything followed a familiar pattern. Yet beneath the surface, discomfort grew. Yu Menglong's death was reported as sudden. The circumstances remained unclear. No detailed explanation offered closure. Instead, ambiguity settled in. And ambiguity invites speculation. Within production circles, whispers circulated quietly. Not accusations, not theories, just fragments of concern. Schedules that had been demanding. Expectations that had escalated rapidly. A pace that left little room for rest or refusal. None of these elements were unique. They were structural, normalized, and perhaps that normalization was the most troubling detail of all. Jackie Chan did not publicly challenge the system. He did not name agencies or projects. But when he spoke, his emphasis was unmistakable. He described an industry that rarely sleeps. A world where youth is currency, productivity is mandatory, and vulnerability is often mistaken for weakness. He spoke of artists who smile in front of cameras and collapse behind closed doors. Of young performers who carry pressure in silence because speaking out risks being replaced. His words did not accuse. They exposed. For those listening closely, a pattern emerged. Yu Menglong was not portrayed as reckless or unstable. He was portrayed as obedient, dedicated, resilient to the point of self-erasure. And in that portrayal, a more unsettling question began to take shape. If someone so disciplined, so hopeful, and so committed could vanish so suddenly, what did that say about the cost of survival in this industry? Jackie Chan's voice faltered when he reached that point. He stopped short of conclusions. He did not assign blame. Instead, he allowed the weight of the unanswered to remain. Because sometimes, what is not said carries more truth than any declaration. Jackie Chan had witnessed death many times in his career. But this one, he admitted, felt different, as if he had lost a member of his own family. Behind the polished interviews and carefully curated public images, the entertainment industry operates on a different rhythm. It is a rhythm defined by urgency, by deadlines that never recede, by an unspoken understanding that rest is a luxury few can afford. Jackie Chan described this world without embellishment. He spoke of endless expectations layered onto young performers long before they have learned how to refuse them. Auditions bleed into rehearsals. Rehearsals bleed into overnight shoots. And somewhere between exhaustion and obligation, personal boundaries quietly dissolve. What the audience sees is a finished product, a smiling face, a flawless performance. What they do not see are the hours spent alone in dressing rooms, the physical strain masked by makeup, or the mental toll carried in silence. According to Jackie, The most dangerous aspect of this system is not its intensity, but its normalization. Pressure, he explained, is no longer treated as a warning sign. It is treated as proof of commitment. In the room that night, several young actors lowered their heads as he spoke. Some wiped tears from their eyes. They did not need clarification. They recognized themselves in his words. Many of them had learned early that endurance was rewarded, while hesitation invited replacement. Competition in the industry is relentless. There are always others waiting, younger, cheaper, more compliant. For emerging performers, this reality creates a quiet fear that never fully disappears. Fear of being labeled difficult, fear of being forgotten, fear that speaking honestly might end a career before it has truly begun. Jackie Chan did not accuse agencies or producers directly. Instead, he described a system built on imbalance, a system where power flows in one direction and gratitude is expected in return. Young actors are told they are fortunate. That opportunity itself is a privilege. Over time, this message becomes internalized. Fatigue becomes weakness. Silence becomes professionalism. He spoke of artists who carry emotional burdens without any outlet, of young people far from home, surrounded by colleagues but isolated in practice, surrounded by cameras but unseen as individuals. In such conditions, loneliness does not arrive suddenly. It accumulates. One sentence in particular unsettled the room. "People only see the smiles," Jackie said quietly. "They do not ask what happens when the camera turns off." The response was immediate. Heads nodded. The silence that followed was not passive. It was heavy with recognition. As he continued, Jackie revealed a personal detail that surprised many. After Yu Menglong's death, he had written a letter addressed to the young actor's parents. Not a public statement, not a press release, a private letter. He described sitting alone, trying to find words that could carry meaning without causing further harm. He never sent it. When asked why, he admitted that no language felt sufficient. No sentence could bridge the distance between intention and loss. How does one comfort parents who have outlived their child? How does one explain that their son was admired, respected, and loved by millions, when none of that could bring him back? The letter remained unsent, a physical reminder of helplessness. This moment marked a shift in Jackie Chan's tone. Until then, his words had focused on remembrance and reflection. Now, something else surfaced. Not anger, not accusation, but an unmistakable sense of restraint. When reporters pressed him gently about the cause of Yu Menglong's death, he did not answer immediately. He lowered his head, took a long breath. The pause stretched. "There are things," he finally said, "that I cannot say publicly." The statement was calm, measured, but its implications reverberated far beyond the room. He did not deny knowledge. He did not dismiss questions. Instead, he acknowledged the existence of information without disclosing it. This distinction mattered. To many watching, it suggested that the public narrative was incomplete. That silence was not the absence of truth, but a boundary drawn around it. Jackie added that he believed the truth would eventually emerge, that the world deserved to know who Yu Menglong truly was, and what he had endured. He did not clarify what form that truth might take. He did not assign timelines. He did not indicate responsibility. But the damage was already done. The moment transformed grief into suspicion. Within hours, his words circulated widely. Clips were replayed. Headlines emphasized the pause more than the sentences themselves. Viewers replayed his expressions, searching for meaning in his eyes. In the absence of details, the public began to connect fragments. Discussions surfaced about management practices, about working conditions, about projects that had remained unexplained. None of these conversations produced definitive answers, but they achieved something else. They refused to let the story end quietly. Jackie Chan did not return to the microphone after that statement. He did not expand. He did not correct interpretations. He allowed the ambiguity to stand. And in doing so, he shifted the burden of silence away from the individual and onto the system that demanded it. "There are things I cannot say publicly," Jackie Chan finally admitted, "but the truth will come out one day." The silence that followed Jackie Chan's admission did not fade with time. It multiplied. Within hours, fragments of his words circulated across platforms, stripped of context and replayed in isolation. Headlines focused less on what he had said and more on what he had chosen not to say. Viewers slowed footage, examined his pauses, and replayed the moment his eyes lowered before answering. In a media landscape accustomed to immediate disclosure, restraint itself became a statement. Public reaction shifted rapidly. Grief turned into suspicion. Sympathy evolved into insistence. Online discussions intensified as fans revisited Yu Menglong's final months. Old interviews were re-examined. Appearances that once seemed routine were now scrutinized for signs of fatigue or distress. A smile held too long, a laugh that arrived too late. None of these details offered proof, but together, they formed a pattern of unease. Journalists followed the same trajectory. Reports began to question the circumstances surrounding Yu Menglong's professional commitments. Projects that had been announced quietly disappeared from schedules. Management relationships were described in cautious language. Words like pressure, expectation, and responsibility appeared repeatedly, often without attribution. No allegations were formally made. No accusations confirmed, yet the narrative had shifted. This was no longer solely a story of loss. It was a story of omission. International media outlets echoed the sentiment. Coverage emphasized the emotional weight of Jackie Chan's appearance, describing it as one of the rare moments when a cultural icon revealed vulnerability without protection. Commentators noted that his grief seemed to extend beyond personal sorrow. It carried the texture of unresolved knowledge. Petitions began circulating online, demanding transparency. Fans insisted they were not seeking scandal. They wanted clarity. They wanted assurance that the industry had not failed another young artist in silence. The demand was consistent across languages and borders. Do not give us rumors. Give us the truth. Jackie Chan did not respond to these calls directly. He did not deny their legitimacy, nor did he endorse their conclusions. His silence continued, but it was no longer empty. In a subsequent appearance, he spoke briefly about Yu Menglong once more. This time, his voice did not break. His tone was controlled, deliberate. He described the young actor not as a victim, but as a person of determination. Someone who believed deeply in his work. Someone who had chosen this life with intention. Then, he revealed a final detail. Among the last communications he received from Yu Menglong was a message, simple in structure and devastating in hindsight. It was not a confession, not a complaint. It was a statement of resolve. "Thank you for the inspiration, Master," the message read. "I will keep fighting." Jackie Chan admitted that he did not understand the weight of those words at the time. They appeared optimistic, encouraging. Only later did their tone change. Only later did they begin to sound like a farewell. This realization marked a turning point. It reframed everything that came before it. The exhaustion, the silence, the discipline that left no space for vulnerability. The message suggested persistence, but also struggle, and it raised a question no one could answer conclusively. What was he fighting against? As the story unfolded, one truth became increasingly difficult to ignore. Yu Menglong had not been portrayed as unstable or rebellious. He had not challenged authority publicly. He had complied. He had endured. He had continued forward without complaint. In many ways, he had done everything the system demanded of him. That realization unsettled observers more than any scandal could have. If obedience and dedication were not enough to ensure safety, then the problem extended beyond individual behavior. It pointed toward structure. Jackie Chan's final public comments did not offer closure. Instead, they served as a warning. He spoke directly to younger performers, urging them not to isolate themselves, not to endure pain alone, not to confuse silence with strength. His words resonated precisely because they contradicted the culture he described. In an industry that rewards endurance, he advocated for vulnerability. In a system that moves relentlessly forward, he asked for pause. After delivering this message, Jackie Chan exited the studio without ceremony. According to a crew member present that evening, he stopped briefly outside beneath the night sky. He did not address anyone. He simply looked upward and whispered a single sentence, too quiet for microphones to capture fully. Those nearby later recalled its meaning clearly. He wished peace for someone who had never been granted rest. By then, the story had outgrown any single voice. It lived in conversations, in unanswered questions, in the discomfort of an audience no longer willing to accept ambiguity as closure. Yu Menglong's name became associated not only with promise, but with warning. What if his death was not an isolated tragedy? What if it was evidence of something systemic, something repeatedly ignored? Jackie Chan never answered those questions directly. He did not need to. The silence he left behind spoke with unsettling clarity. What if Yu Menglong was not just another tragic loss, but a warning the industry refused to hear? When Jackie Chan finally looked directly into the camera, there was no performance left to offer. No mask, no discipline to fall back on. Only a man addressing an audience he no longer wished to impress. His message was simple, yet it carried the weight of decades spent inside an unforgiving system. He spoke to young artists, not as a mentor delivering advice, but as someone who had arrived too late to change an outcome he would carry for the rest of his life. Do not fight alone, he said. Do not let exhaustion convince you that silence is strength. When the weight becomes unbearable, speak. There will always be someone willing to listen. The words traveled far beyond the studio walls. Within hours, they were shared across platforms, translated into dozens of languages, and repeated by people who had never met Yu Menglong. For many, the message felt personal. For others, it felt overdue. After the interview concluded, Jackie Chan did not linger. The cameras powered down, the lights dimmed. Crew members later recalled that he exited quietly, without assistance or ceremony. Outside, beneath the night sky, he stopped. For a moment, he stood still. Then he whispered a sentence meant for no audience at all. A wish not for justice or answers, but for peace. It was the closest he would come to saying goodbye. To the public, the story of Yu Menglong became more than the loss of a promising actor. It became a mirror held up to an industry built on relentless momentum. An industry that celebrates resilience while quietly punishing vulnerability. An industry where success often arrives faster than the emotional tools needed to survive it. Jackie Chan had built his legacy on endurance, on refusing to yield. Yet in this moment, his greatest contribution was not another act of strength, but an admission of helplessness. Even legends, it seemed, could be rendered powerless by loss. His tears altered the conversation. They reminded the world that fame does not shield grief, that experience does not prevent regret, and that no amount of success can prepare someone for the silence left behind when a life ends too soon. Yu Menglong was remembered as a light, a presence brief but impactful, a young man whose dedication never wavered, even when the cost remained unseen. His final message spoke of perseverance, but his absence spoke louder. As fans revisited his work, a different understanding emerged. Each performance carried the trace of effort, each smile, the possibility of fatigue unseen. The story refused to settle into comfort, because closure, in this case, felt dishonest. The truth surrounding Yu Menglong's death remained incomplete, unspoken, deferred. Whether it would ever fully emerge was uncertain. But one fact could no longer be ignored. The silence surrounding such losses is not accidental. It is maintained. When the cameras stopped rolling that night, something fundamental shifted. The image of an unbreakable hero dissolved, replaced by a man grieving openly, without answers. In that vulnerability, a different kind of legacy took shape. Not one of invincibility, but one of truth acknowledged too late. The cameras stopped rolling that night, but the truth behind Yu Menglong's death may still be waiting to be told.